On February 11, 2011, New York City was in a state of shock after a series of violent attacks that left 4 people dead and several others injured. The perpetrator of these crimes was Maksim Gelman, a 23-year-old man with a history of mental illness. In this video, we'll explore what made Maksim Gelman a spree killer and examine the events leading up to the tragic incident. Maksim Gelman grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and had a troubled childhood. His parents divorced when he was young, and his mother struggled with drug addiction. Gelman himself was diagnosed with schizophrenia and spent time in psychiatric hospitals. Schizophrenia is a serious mental disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. People with schizophrenia may experience delusions, hallucinations, and disorganized speech and behavior. Gelman's mother, Svetlana Gelman, was a key figure in his life. She had a history of drug abuse and was arrested several times for drug-related offenses. Gelman was close to his mother and was devastated when she died of cancer in 2008. After his mother died, Maksim became more withdrawn and started talking about conspiracy theories. He was convinced that the government was out to get him and that he was being followed. Gelman lived alone in a small apartment in Brooklyn. He spent most of his time playing video games and browsing the internet. He was unemployed and had few friends. He was always quiet and kept to himself. I never would have guessed that he was capable of something like this. On February 11, 2011, Gelman got into an argument with his stepfather, Alexander Kuznetsov, and stabbed him to death with a kitchen knife. He then went to his ex-girlfriend's apartment and killed her mother and her mother's boyfriend. Maksim Gelman's violent spree in February 2011 left a trail of devastation in its wake. In addition to killing 4 innocent people and injuring several others, Gelman also targeted his ex-girlfriend, Yelena Bolchenko. Bolchenko was not at home when Gelman first came looking for her, but he was determined to find her. He managed to track her down to a subway station in Brooklyn, where he confronted her on a train. Eyewitnesses reported that Gelman appeared to be out of control and crazed as he attacked Bolchenko with a knife, stabbing her multiple times. Despite the efforts of bystanders to intervene, Gelman was able to escape from the train and flee the scene. Bolchenko's murder was a particularly heinous act of violence, not only because it was committed against someone who Gelman knew personally, but also because it took place in a public space where many innocent people were present. The incident left many members of the community feeling fearful and vulnerable, and it underscored the need for increased safety measures and resources to prevent such tragedies from occurring. Gelman's targeting of his ex-girlfriend also highlights the issue of domestic violence, which is a pervasive problem in many societies around the world. The fact that Gelman was willing to go to such extreme lengths to track down and harm someone he had been in a relationship with speaks to the toxic and dangerous nature of some romantic relationships, and the need for increased awareness, support, and resources for those who may be experiencing abuse. The murder of Yelena Bolchenko is a tragic reminder of the devastating impact that violence can have on individuals and communities, and the urgent need for action to prevent such senseless acts from occurring in the future. Eyewitnesses to Maksim Gelman's violent spree in February 2011 describe a scene of chaos and terror, as the perpetrator went on a rampage through the streets and public transportation system of Brooklyn. One witness, who was on the subway train when Gelman attacked his ex-girlfriend Yelena Bolchenko, recalls the fear and confusion that swept through the crowded car as Gelman began to lash out with a knife. "I was on the train when he started attacking people. It was terrifying," the witness recounted. "Everyone was screaming and running for their lives. I could hear people shouting for help, and there was blood everywhere. It was like something out of a nightmare." Other witnesses described similar scenes of violence and panic, as Gelman carjacked vehicles, ran down pedestrians, and attacked passengers on a subway train. In each case, his victims were caught off guard and unable to defend themselves against his sudden and brutal attacks. The impact of Gelman's actions on the community was profound, with many people reporting feelings of fear and anxiety in the aftermath of the spree. The fact that such a violent incident could occur in a public place like a subway train underscored the need for increased safety measures and resources to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Despite the trauma and devastation caused by Gelman's actions, however, many eyewitnesses and survivors also displayed remarkable resilience and bravery in the face of danger. They came together to support one another, to offer aid to the injured, and to stand up against the senseless violence that had been inflicted upon their community. Their courage and determination serve as a reminder that, even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for healing and recovery. Narrator: Gelman was eventually apprehended by police after a 28-hour manhunt. He was charged with murder, attempted murder, and assault. When the prosecutor made the statement that Maksim Gelman's actions were senseless and tragic, they were acknowledging the devastating impact of Gelman's violent spree on the victims and their families, as well as the wider community. Gelman's actions resulted in the loss of 4 innocent lives and left several others injured, traumatized, and forever scarred. However, the prosecutor also acknowledged that Gelman's mental illness may have played a role in his behavior. As we know, Gelman had a history of schizophrenia, which is a serious mental disorder that can impair a person's ability to think, feel, and behave in a coherent and rational manner. People with schizophrenia may experience delusions, hallucinations, and disordered thinking, which can cause them to act in ways that are unpredictable and sometimes violent. But while Gelman's mental illness may have contributed to his behavior, it does not excuse his crimes. People with mental illnesses are not inherently violent, and the vast majority of individuals with mental health issues do not engage in violent behavior. Gelman made a choice to act on his delusions and commit horrific acts of violence, and he must be held accountable for his actions. Furthermore, it is important to note that mental illness is not a justification for criminal behavior. While it is true that individuals with mental illnesses may require specialized treatment and support, they are still subject to the same laws and consequences as anyone else who commits a crime. In Gelman's case, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, which reflects the severity of his crimes and the need for accountability. In conclusion, the prosecutor's statement acknowledges both the tragic impact of Gelman's actions and the potential role of his mental illness, while also emphasizing that mental illness does not excuse criminal behavior. It is a reminder that we must continue to work towards a society where mental health issues are destigmatized and individuals are able to access the support and treatment they need, while also recognizing that everyone, regardless of their mental health status, is responsible for their actions. In 2012, Maksim Gelman was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was handed down by Justice Vincent Del Giudice in Brooklyn Supreme Court, following a plea deal that spared Gelman from the death penalty. Gelman had pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and several other charges related to the violent spree that he went on in February 2011. The spree began when Gelman stabbed his stepfather to death in their apartment in Brooklyn. He then went on to carjack and murder a pedestrian with a knife, before hijacking a car and using it to run down and kill a pedestrian and injure several others. Gelman then continued his rampage, attacking a subway rider with a knife and injuring several other passengers before fleeing the scene. He was finally apprehended by police the next day after a 28-hour manhunt that involved more than 1,000 police officers. The sentence of life without parole means that Gelman will spend the rest of his life in prison, without any possibility of release or parole. This is the most severe sentence that can be handed down by a judge in the United States, and is reserved for the most serious crimes, such as murder. Gelman's sentence reflects the severity of his crimes and the need for accountability. It also serves as a warning to others that violent behavior will not be tolerated, and that there are serious consequences for those who choose to engage in such acts. While Gelman's sentence may provide some sense of closure for the victims and their families, it cannot undo the damage that he has done. The tragic loss of life and the trauma caused by his actions will be felt for years to come. It is a reminder that we must continue to work towards preventing violence and addressing the root causes of such behavior, including mental illness and access to resources and support. The case of Maksim Gelman serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of untreated mental illness and the devastating consequences it can have. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please seek help. There is hope and support available. Kindly remember to like and subscribe to my channel for insightful recaps. Thank you.